Want to hear an amazing story? Back in 1960, Coach Brooks was on the Olympic hockey team. But a week before the games, his coach cuts him and sends him home. And that team went on to win the gold medal without him.
Herb Brooks had given up his dream of Olympic glory until 20 ordinary kids.
Why'd you want to play hockey?
Isn't it obvious? For the girls.
Gave him a second chance.
The Soviets win. My goal is to beat them at their own game.
Beat the best team in the world.
Gold medalists in 64, 68, 72, 76.
Name?
Mark Johnson.
Buzzy Schneider.
Mike Eruzione.
You're missing some of the best players.
I'm not looking for the best players, Craig. I'm looking for the right ones.
They were bitter rivals.
A lot of guys from Minnesota and Boston.
Yeah, that's gonna work.
But one coach had a plan to turn them into a team.
I got no time for quitters.
You want me to play, huh? I want you to be a hockey player! I am a hockey player!
Think that'll get them going?
Oh, yeah.
When you face the impossible,
Russians' main weapon is intimidation.
This guy's ever smile?
They're Russians. They get shot if they smile.
and you refuse to give up.
I didn't think it was gonna be this hard.
Yeah, you did.
We start becoming a team right now.
Miracles can happen.
When you pull on that jersey, the name on the front is more important than the one on the back.
Michael Eruzione.
Who do you play for?
I play for the United States of America.
Welcome to the Olympics, gentlemen.
Walt Disney Pictures presents
This is something that this country is ready for.
Great moments are born from great opportunity. If we played them 10 times, they might win 9, but not this game.
Listen to him. We can beat these guys.
Discover the story
This is your time.
behind the greatest moment in sports history.
So how cool was that, right? I mean, everybody loves a good story. And why is it that we love stories so much? You know, the movie industry is over a $40 billion industry. That's crazy. But when you think about it, how come stories, they're so magnetic? What draws us to story? We can walk into a room, whether it's in a theater or our own living room, we watch a story projected onto a screen and we hear the storyline and we feel all the feels. We feel all those feelings. We can be captivated by the drama. We laugh out loud over the comedy. We're sitting on the edge of our seats in anticipation to see how that suspense is gonna unfold. Man, we cheer for people we've never met, and we hurt for others that aren't even real people, they're characters in a movie. But there's just something about a good story that draws us in. It goes way beyond the entertainment factor. There's something about a story that we wanna be part of, and something in us longs to be the hero or play some part in the outcome. You know, one way to think about it is that maybe God has designed us to embrace stories, really embrace stories. After all, the Bible, it's the primary way that we learn about God, and it's full of great stories. So us loving stories is perhaps a way that we're made in His image. And more than that, we want our own story to be a good one, to be a good story. But if you're anything like me, there are times that our daily lives, they just don't seem like an epic tale. It seems more like a random occurrence of trivial events. We wake up, we go to work, we come home, we eat dinner, we watch some Netflix, we try to do some work, then we head to bed, and we do the same thing again and again and again the next day. It's almost like a scene out of the Groundhog Day movie, that same routine over and over and over again. And sure, every once in a while, good things or even great things can happen in our lives. We meet a special someone and we fall in love, or we work hard and we get that promotion, or we have an experience that's like an adventure and it makes us feel so alive. And some things come along and they're not so good. We fall out of love or she falls out of love with us. The company downsizes and lets us go after years of service to the company, or the doctor shares the test results and it's not the news that we'd hoped for. And it's easy to look at each of these events and struggle to see any purpose, any grand story, anything with significance that's behind them, or any piece of a story that's worth telling. Kind of just like young Simba in The Lion King, we lose sight of the bigger picture and we struggle to remember who we are and what our role is in that bigger story. In your group, we want to talk and have conversations about this idea of the bigger story, the biggest story. So first, we're going to look at the story God has been writing since before we were even born. And then we're gonna talk about how our own individual stories fit into that bigger story. And finally, what's the story that we wanna tell moving forward? Man, the Bible's, it's a lot of things, from entertaining to instructive, and maybe most importantly, it helps us see the big picture of God's story. And it begins with the Creator who, with just a snap of his fingers, put the stars in the sky, and with the spoken word brought light out of the darkness, who before the foundation of the entire world, he would know the number of grains of sand on the beaches and even the number of hairs on your head and my head. God would bring the world into creation. He would choose to create mankind from his own image, breathing life into man and then woman in a beautiful display of a sacred relationship, unity and communion together, just as he had eternally been. But it wouldn't take long for things to turn, as people would choose not to trust the words of God and turn their own way, causing a division in the relationship between each other and also with God. But God, in his infinite grace, would have an epic plan of restoration to redeem and to rescue his people once again. God would establish a covenant with Abraham, for he would be their God and they would be his people. God would set a plan into motion to bless all of the nations through this family line. Despite throwing a wrench into the plan from time to time, God would work through people like Moses and Rahab and other heroes of the faith, people like David, who was far from perfect, but he would always bounce back and he would pursue God's heart. Or at times, God would call prophets from Isaiah to Jeremiah, Hosea to Malachi, and many in between to speak truth into the lives of the generations. And then, just as God had planned and promised from the very beginning, our ultimate hero, Jesus, would make his arrival. And when the right time came, he'd perform miracles to draw everyone's eyes beyond just what is seen. He would teach and set an example of what a true relationship with God could look like. He would later get betrayed and crucified, dying the death that we deserved. His followers would mourn his death and tremble for their own lives. Yet no one was anticipating what would happen next. After that third day, Jesus would rise from the dead, and our hero would walk the earth for thousands to see. He'd eat meals with his followers, doing breakfast on the beach with his buddies, even allowing those with doubts to touch his scars. He would not only speak of his great love for the world, but he would demonstrate how deep, how long, how wide the Father's love really is. And my hope is that when we back up and think about God's story, we'll start to see how so often the stories that we love are just different versions of his story. There's someone who needs to be rescued. There's some force at work that makes it hard for that rescue to ever happen. But then at just the right time, a hero comes in and saves the day. And if you think about it, my story, your story, the stories that we read in the Bible can many times be micro versions of God's story. And they add up to one huge, big story. You see, God's writing a bigger story than we can see. The men and women that we read about in the Bible, they didn't see the role they were playing. I mean, we can see it looking back now, and oftentimes God told them it was happening, but they couldn't see it while they were in it. But God was definitely writing that bigger story. So we're gonna set you guys up with some questions to ask to dive into his story a little bit deeper. And we'll trust you to go where it takes you, learning from and sharing with the guys in your group. And we'll see you next session.